Hey guys, Skill here. Welcome back to X-Force Explained, our new series where we get nerdy about the rules, interactions with new releases in the X-Force wave, next evolution. So I am psyched about this episode because I love this hero. I have been playing a huge amount of Domino since this box came out, and I actually think she's my favorite character in the entire game to play, which you don't have to care much about my opinion, but I've played a lot of this game and a lot of different heroes, and Domino is just an absolute blast. Um, I could spend a long time getting nerdy about why I enjoy playing her, but she just interacts with going through your deck pass in such an interesting way that I just find super, super rewarding. She's strong, she's flexible, total blast to play. So today, let's talk about all the rules things that she's got going on. So she has an awesome alter ego ability. It says, choose a card in your hand, swap that card with the top card of your discard pile, limit once per round. So something that can be important for her, as it was with maybe Iron Man back in the day, is the order of your discard pile matters. So you're not free to randomize it as you wish. The card that's on top of your discard pile is determined by what happens. So when you spend cards, you can spend them in any order, place them in the discard pile in any order. Keep in mind when you're playing an event that the event will be the last card that goes into your discard pile. So you'll spend the resources first, you'll complete resolving the event, and then the event will go into its discard pile. And if you spend for like a permanent card, like a ally or an upgrade, then the resources that you spent will be on the top of your discard pile. So a lot of really strong interactions you can do with this. With a resource card, you can potentially spend it twice if you are spending it on something that doesn't discard itself, so not an event. So you can use your jackpot for multiple resources a bunch of times. You can just cycle a card and play it over and over. You have to choose the card in your hand before you make the swap. This isn't as important as on her hero ability, but yeah, this is an awesome ability. Make sure you keep track of what cards are actually on top of your discard pile. So on her hero side, she's got two abilities. The constant says, when counting resources on cards discarded from the top of your deck, count each printed wild icon twice. So this is a pretty niche effect. It only applies when you're counting resources on cards discarded from the top of your deck, which is something that for now only happens on effects that are in this pack or in this box. So this is not going to have any impact on spending resources for things. It's not going to have impact on like generating resources ever. It's just if you're discarding cards off the top of your deck and an ability is counting how many resources those have. In those cases, you count each printed wild icon twice, which means you look at the wild icon, you count it, and you look at the same wild icon, you count it again. So this is going to let Luck Be a Lady trigger twice, and you'll be able to choose different options for each one. A lot of her abilities are just like increasing in impact based on the number of resource icons they count, so wilds are going to effectively count as 2. Just really cool ability. Just keep in mind that don't try to apply this too generously. It doesn't affect actual resource generation at all. It is only happening when you're counting resources off cards discarded from the top of your deck. Then she has an action. Choose a card in your hand, swap that card with the top card of your deck. Limit once per round. So this is very much like the alter ego action. Here it is quite important that you must choose the card in your hand before you execute the swap. So you don't get to see what that card is before you decide which card you're pitching. So I usually take the card in my hand physically and I put it down so that I force myself to make that decision, and then I'll take the card into my hand and replace the one that I set on top. For this ability and her alter ego ability, you're not drawing the card, but the card is entering your hand. So there are some kind of niche interactions with cards that care about entering your hand or not that may or may not trigger based on exactly what that ability says. Anyway, that's Domino's identity card. Diamondback here is an ally who has an ability that causes a damage to be dealt to her. You exhaust Diamondback, deal a damage to her, and yada yada, she deals a bunch of damage. Really powerful ability. I wanted to mention that you are able to use her last health to trigger this ability. Just like the Mantis ally before her, there's a rule that says if you begin initiating an ability and the card that had the ability on it leaves play, over the course of initiating it, you keep resolving that ability. So she's able to use her last health to use this ability, and it still completely executes. Here's a freebie. Probability field does not exhaust, so you can use it multiple times a turn. Readies are really good with Domino. Domino has 2 pistols, and she also has an upgrade called Sharpshooter. I wanted to talk about how these discard cards relative to each other. So Domino's Pistol says, as its cost, exhaust Domino's Pistol, choose an enemy, and discard the top card of your deck. Then deal 1 damage to that enemy for each resource icon discarded this way. This attack gains ranged. Sharpshooter says, interrupt. When you make a ranged attack, discard the top card of your deck. This attack deals 1 additional damage for each resource icon discarded this way. So, to keep the order of operations straight here, what is going to happen first is you pay the cost of the action on Domino's Pistol. So that means exhausting it and choosing your target. So it's important to know that you choose your target before you know exactly how much damage you are going to deal. I mean, you might know because you're Domino and you cheat by manipulating the top of your deck. But you choose the target first, and then you discard the top card of your deck. All of that is part of Domino's Pistol's cost. That's before the arrow. Then, if you wish, is when you trigger Sharpshooter. You're going to discard a card for Sharpshooter's cost. So the first, if you're triggering both of these, the first card that you discard is Domino's Pistol's card. Then you're going to discard Sharpshooter's card. And those are both going to increase into 1 instance of damage. So Sharpshooter, if it discards a wild and you count it as twice, it's going to increase the damage by 2. And if Domino's Pistol discarded a wild, the base is going to be 2. So that will do a total of 4 damage, and it will be ranged. And another freebie, Sharpshooter does not exhaust either. So if you have both of Domino's Pistols, you can use the same copy of Sharpshooter on both of those. All right. So Domino comes with a cycle of cards that have a very similar trigger condition that say a response after this card or after a card is discarded from the top of your deck. And it is super fun to mess around with these. These are like the most fun thing to do with Domino. I wanted to talk about how this trigger condition works. So when you discard, or it's pretty straightforward when you're discarding 1 card off the top of your deck. If you discard 1 card off the top of your deck and one of these responses apply, you can trigger it. Another freebie is all of these are optional. So there are definitely times when you don't want to trigger Jackpot. You want it in your discard pile to grab it from your alter ego. And the Painted Lady, you're not forced to put any number of cards attached to it. You can make that decision later. If you're discarding multiple cards off the top of your deck, all of those discards happen simultaneously. Then they're placed in your discard pile 1 by 1. Remember that their order matters. And then any number of responses like these will trigger, which means this isn't often going to matter, but you can order them in whatever way you want. So if I discard all 3 of these cards, I can choose in what order I'm going to shuffle Jackpot in, add Digging Deep to my hand, and put White Fox into play. Like I said, it's like really rare for that order of operations to really matter, but just keep in mind that you can order it however. So normally if I'm doing a multi-discard, I'll kind of make a separate pile, discard all of the cards into that stack, and then trigger any number of responses out of that I want to. I guess you could say it definitely matters for Painted Lady. You get to see the entire batch of the discard before you have to make decisions about how many of them you're going to trigger and to put under Painted Lady. Although Painted Lady does see each card individually, so you could tuck multiple cards from the same discard under Painted Lady at the same time. Couple more points on this. A effect like Caliban's that says discard cards from the top of your deck until such and such. These effects, this is what we recently asked and got confirmed on. This kind of discard effect is still treated as simultaneous. You're going to discard cards until you reach a certain thing, and maybe you're discarding your entire deck. And then you're going to trigger any number of responses like these in whatever order you want. So you don't have to be stopping after every individual card to make decisions. You're going to do the whole discard. If your deck empties, you're going to reshuffle it instantly, and then you're going to trigger responses. So according to an FAQ that's in the rulebook, remember that when your deck empties, it's going to reshuffle immediately. So if Jackpot is the last card in your deck, it'll get discarded, you'll reshuffle your deck, and then if you wish, you could trigger Jackpot's ability and shuffle it back into your deck. So that's actually true of all of these guys. If the instance of discard that you're resolving causes the deck to reshuffle, what's technically going to happen is these cards get shuffled into your deck and then they trigger from inside your deck and come out of it, which is funny and cool, but probably doesn't matter. So what I do in those situations in practice is just pull these cards out, reshuffle the deck in the meantime, and then resolve these however I'm choosing to resolve them. But if you want to be extremely, extremely thorough, you can actually choose to trigger your deck reshuffle twice after Jackpot is the last card in the deck, because you can shuffle it normally and then have Jackpot shuffle itself from the deck back into the deck. And you can really feel great about that. Anyway, one last thing I wanted to pull out. We're waiting on the final confirmation on this, but we asked a similar question about whether constant abilities can be considered to resolve like other abilities kind of during setup, like wondering if an ability like Connection to the World Mind happens while drawing up to your original hand size. In answer to that, they said that constant abilities don't resolve like other abilities, so they intended for a constant like Connection to the World Mind to be active during setup, even though there's a thing in setup that says that abilities on player cards don't trigger, or they don't resolve. This force response says after you resolve an ability on your identity or an identity-specific card, take 1 damage. I am here to say that I don't think this is going to trigger based on Domino's constant ability. So this first thing that says when counting resources on cards discarded from the top of your deck, count each printed wild icon twice. I think it's a mandatory constant ability, and that it's not considered resolved in a way that's going to trigger this ability. I think triggering this action or resolving abilities on your other identity-specific cards are going to cause this. But I think that resolving one of her abilities, that like one of her events, and you discard a wild and it counts it as 2, I think that's going to deal you a total of 1 damage instead of 2 damage. So that's a nice break to catch. Anyway, if you have any more questions about Domino or how anything in her deck or kit works, please ask. I would love to try and help. And just go play this hero and have fun, because she's a total blast.